Good evening. You are listening to Radio Free Magonia. As always, I'm your host, Michael Parrish, and as usual, Tom Goodwin will not be joining us. He is on vacation. Tonight, my guest is an author and a podcaster and an experiencer. He is the host of the Salsido Paranormal Podcast. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
All right. He has written two novels, The Red Lake Entity and From Unknown, in addition to two nonfiction books, The Darkness Rises, Real Life Accounts of the Supernatural, and The Darkness Rises, Paranormal Articles. I would like to introduce you to James Salsido.
Thank you for having me.
Good evening. What's going on, James?
Well, I've had some experience over the years, and we're both part of a Discord server for Where Did the Road Go, which
Yes.
I love that show as well. And I didn't realize I'd heard you on there until I started listening to some of this podcast, and
Yeah.
but yeah, and I just you mentioned that you were looking for guests, and I thought I would come on and share my experiences. And I'm always interested to see what people think of them.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've been on a few podcasts and no one ever asks the same questions about everything that I've been through, which is why I like to always do this when I can.
Yeah. So let's start where it starts. Like many of us, before you were an author, before you were a podcaster, you were yourself an experiencer.
Yeah, well, it started when I was about 12, 13, maybe 14 years old. I want to apologize now. I'm terrible with dates and
That's okay.
remembering years and all that. Doesn't help that I'm almost 40 now. So,
Mm-hmm.
but when I was preteen or teen, right around there, I had my first experience. I went to visit my cousin at his family's new house that they had just got recently, and I it seemed really big to me as a kid, and including the basement, which is where we decided to sleep for the night, because back then we didn't know anything about the whole stereotype of basements being scary or anything like that. We were just little
Mm-hmm.
kids, and so that's where we had my first experience, and it was a shared experience. So um, that made it even more interesting. First of all, I should say, just for reference, I was born legally blind,
Mm-hmm.
and so I am extremely nearsighted. Um, and so I could not see clearly from one end of the room, any room, really, to another, unless it was like a closet, basically.
Yeah.
So this basement was, like I said, it seemed really big. The family was still unpacking everything, so there was belongings kind of scattered throughout the basement, but there was paths, leading everywhere that you needed to go. They had their washer and dryer and stuff down there, and and they had like a big couch bed, which is where my cousin and I slept. And they had already uh, hung up clotheslines from the rafters, which I thought was, I had never seen that before, but so that was interesting. And they had some sheets hanging on some of the rafters in different places. I'm not sure if my cousin did that all or if some of it was theirs, or I don't really know. I mean, they could have just done laundry before I got there. But so, and the lights were all individual lights. You had to turn each one on or off on its own, using a rope that hung from the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And so we only had the light on above us, and then the one on by the stairwell leading back upstairs. And the area behind the stairs was the darkest part of the basement. Um, and so that's kind of where we were looking when we were facing when we were in this couch bed. Um, and there was another one of those clotheslines hanging up along that wall. Um, but then we noticed there's something above the clothesline, which also had a sheet hanging on it. It was basically the from the neck up of an elderly woman looking back at us. Now these clotheslines were hung up near the ceiling, so it must have been at least 5.5, maybe even 6 feet up off the ground. Um, and when we looked down at the ground, there were no feet. There was nothing near the clothesline where anyone could be standing on it. But above this clothesline, there was an elderly woman looking at us. And I could see her facial features somewhat a lot in a lot more detail than I should have been able to see them. I should have just seen a bright blur from where we were at. But
Now,
I could see. I'm
for
sorry.
for purposes of clarification, what time of day was this?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, this was at night.
Okay.
It was already dark outside. There were windows, but they were near the ceiling, and but yeah, it was at night, and so it was mostly dark in there.
And again, who was with you at the time?
My one of my cousins,
Okay.
who lived there with his siblings and his parents, my aunt and uncle.
Now, this figure you saw, how was she dressed?
There I only saw from the neck up, so there really was
No. Okay.
no clothing that was visible.
Well, if there's no clothing, thank God you only saw her from the neck up.
That is very true. I hadn't thought of that before.
And
Um,
how would you describe her features overall?
well, she had I guess almost, I'm not sure if it's like a called a pedicure, or like she had hair like a
Mhm.
hairstyle, um, like a just round around her head. It was all like white hair, and she had on glasses, and um, her eyes are bright colored, not like unnaturally so, but just bright. I don't really know. I don't remember now what color it was exactly, but I do
Mhm.
remember that she was staring at us, and she did not look happy that we were there.
But it was human-like.
Yes.
It wasn't one of these strange figures with porcelain-like skin,
No.
lacking
No.
pupils. Okay.
No. It looked human, except for the fact that there were no feet on the ground,
Hmm.
um, and it was only just from the neck up, and really just barely even that. I mean, it was literally like just from the top of the neck up.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
So what did you do then?
Well, we knew obviously that this was not a person, a regular person, you know, and so at first we debated on going upstairs and getting the rest of the family, but we were also worried, what if we did that and brought everybody downstairs, and whatever this was gone? We would be
Okay.
in some trouble. This was, you know, the family was not like the supernatural paranormal was not something that the family dealt with all the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't. We didn't even really know the word ghost or whatever, except maybe in like Saturday morning cartoons, or
Mhm.
just vague stuff like that. We had
If
no
if I,
idea of what it could
if I
be.
could comment briefly, you mentioned, what would happen if you got the fam and by the time you all got down there it was gone.
Yeah,
And that's the problem with this phenomena is just because you can no longer see it doesn't necessarily mean it's gone.
that's true.
In some
That's
cases,
true.
I've observed it's actually less unnerving to see it
Yeah,
than to sense it, than to simply know it's there without seeing it.
right.
If you know what I'm saying, yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Was I
Yeah.
assume that was weighing on you at the moment or not?
Not so much, but then we were kids, so I mean, our,
Yeah.
our thinking wasn't that complicated yet. We just, we just didn't want to get in trouble. Um, and so, yeah, that was, and I was just also trying to figure out how I could be seeing this so clearly,
Hmm.
because I, it could be my own family across the room, unless they say something out loud, I'm not gonna know that's them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as for what we did after that, we kind of just decided, well, we're not going to look in that corner of the basement anymore tonight, if we can help it. Because there really wasn't anywhere else, for us to go and sleep at that point. That was like already set up for us. I mean, the house
Yeah.
was still being all set up. So we were kind of, unless we wanted to just throw caution to the wind or just, we were basically stuck down there. Um, so yeah.
I do think an optometrist would find that story interesting. But let me ask you, what frame of reference, if any, did you have for that at the time? Or how much of one? What I'm saying was, how familiar were you uh, with the paranormal in concept, in theory, that you could attach the label to that on the spot at the moment?
Basically nothing at all. I mean, I
Okay.
knew of a ghost and what it was supposedly was, but just based, like I said, on cartoons and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was very limited.
Okay. So you thought that that was purely entertainment. You didn't know that
Yeah, yeah,
those are that's
yeah.
based on things that people actually experienced. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So, so yeah, and so we didn't look in that direction anymore, and that's how we spotted something else in the basement. There was a black cat. Talk about stereotypical, in a way.
Hmm.
Black cat, red, orangish eyes, and it was just, it was like, I don't know how you describe how cats like lay on their stomach, but like upright, so they're looking at you.
Yes.
It was like that, and that's what it was doing. But at first, we didn't think it was anything weird. We were wondering if maybe it was an actual living cat that either had gotten in during the move or had been hiding out there during the move. You know, we didn't think it was anything weird at first, but my cousin wanted to go check it out because we wanted to know where it had been hiding or how it gotten
Yeah.
in if it got in. And so we got out of the couch bed, but to do this, we had to look away from this cat.
Hmm.
And of course, also at the same time, we were trying not to look into that back corner, for where that woman was at. Um, but when we turned back around after we were standing on the floor, the cat was not there anymore,
Hmm.
and I didn't hear anything. Now my
Yep.
ears have always been fairly sensitive. I should have heard something moving among all that stuff on a cement floor
Yes.
for as fast as we turned around and we got off the bed. I should have heard something.
Hmm.
Um, but nothing. And there was actually stuff on the floor where it had been at, so it would have made some kind of noise. I
Now,
would
to
think.
your developing mind at the time, did it seem at all inconspicuous that you didn't hear anything, that it kind of came and went without a sound? Or
Yeah,
or did you only realize that in hindsight?
it was more in hindsight. I mean,
Yeah.
it's. I did kind of wonder how it had gotten right there and not make, but you know, it was. It was still. I just figured, well, cats can be stealthy if they want to be, and we were kind of distracted by this other apparition,
Hmm.
for a little while there. Um, but yeah, so once we saw that it wasn't there, we got back into the bed. And of course, once we got back into the bed, it was back again in that same spot.
And it
And
reappeared without a sound.
yeah,
Hmm.
yep, again, no sound when it moved, or however, supposing it moved in the traditional way that, you
Yeah.
know, actual cats would move. So, um, yeah, so that freaked us out even more. And but again, we didn't know what was going on, and it was kind of in the path of, like, in the way of us getting back up the stairs as well. We would have had to go right by it again, to get out of there. So that's when we decided, well, we're just going to not look at anything in this basement anymore except for each other. And somehow, as so many stories seem to go, we eventually fell asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, next morning we woke up and everything was fine. Light was coming in from the windows and everything was okay. Um, but that was my first experience. And the first of my experiences overall, but also the first experience in that house as well.
Okay. Well, so where does it go from there with this particular story? What I'm asking is, usually an encounter like that leads to a study of the home's history, of its past occupants.
I wish that we had thought of that at the
Hmm.
time. We really didn't. And this was also back in like early to mid 1990s when this happened.
Yeah, I was growing up then too myself.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, there was no real internet to speak of either to do a lot of research online. Um, so we just tried to not think about it too much. Um, so yeah, and then by the time eventually, I stopped going there as often just because of family moving, myself moving different places. But and I did try looking into it online years later, but I really didn't find anything, easily. And
Um, if To my experience, if you're looking to research the history of a building,
mhm,
the internet is actually not your best option. Your best option
yeah,
is actually like the city hall of records.
and that would be good. I'm unfortunately with my low vision, I can really hardly read
Hmm.
basic like the regular documents.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't. This isn't a big enough city where there's like public transportation for me to go to any kind of city hall whenever they're open, kind of
Mm.
thing. So, um, yeah, I didn't get to do that, and then eventually that family, my aunt and uncle, eventually the house was sold, and so now it's not in the family anymore. So, um, yeah.
So you say this was the first in that house. I assume the second one was also in that house?
Yeah, well, at least there was a few experiences there. Yeah, total.
Okay.
And
What's the
this
next one?
happened kind of over time, like over like maybe like a summer or just over part of a year. These happened. Um, the second one was one of my other times I went over there on a weekend. It's usually a Friday or Saturday. I'd go over there. And it was at night again. Um, not surprising, we did not sleep in the basement after that whole thing.
Hmm.
Um, we were sleeping in the front living room, um, which actually is right above that space where we saw the image of that woman.
Hmm.
So, so we were just like on blankets on the floor in that room with pillows and stuff.
Now, not to interrupt, but the change of
Yeah,
locale, was that your idea
I
or your
don't remember now.
guardian?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
Um,
I was just wondering if you by chance reported your experience to your aunt and uncle and they moved you upstairs.
oh no,
Yes.
I don't think we ever did until years later.
Uh, so
Mention that.
go on.
Okay, so there were street lights that were outside, so it wasn't totally dark in the living room. Um, and we were still awake. We were laying there just talking. Now, to our right, there was an archway that led into the hallway that had the stairwell in it. The stairs were There was the kind where the basement stairs were under the stairs to the second floor. It was all kind of one built-in thing.
Hmm.
And we noticed a light coming from the stairwell, coming down from the second floor. And it was like a white, misty kind of light that started to come down the stairs. and it didn't walk. It was more like it just floated. Um, and it came down the stairs slowly, and then eventually we saw that there was something in the middle of this light, and I don't know how else to describe it. It looked like a giant cat's claw, like just a giant claw floating in this white light.
Okay.
And it came down the stairs. I guess it wasn't moving that slowly because we didn't move. Um, so there must not have been that much time for us to move and get out of there. Um, but it came into the room we were in and literally floated past our feet and turned so that it was heading through the this other arch that led into the back of the house, and it was literally, I don't even know, like with I could have reached out and put my arm through it next to me as it passed.
Mm-hmm. Did you
And
do that?
no, I didn't do that. I would have been tempted to, like, now if that had happened,
Yeah.
but I did not at the time. But so if it drifted into the dining room, and it I was, after it did that, I was more curious than afraid at that time because it was leaving. You know, it wasn't heading towards us.
Okay. Now, it's interesting to me that it just passed you by. It didn't, based on
Yeah.
your description, it did not stop and observe you.
No, it didn't stop at all.
And what, if any, impression did you get of it in regards to its attitude? It did not seem hostile? It was just kind of there?
It was just kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it didn't feel like, it wasn't like the woman that was glaring at us that was not happy that we were there, you know, in the basement. Um, I mean, of course, I have no idea, you know, if for all we know, it could have been the same figure or it could have been someone
The,
different. I mean,
the
it's
cat,
impossible to
the
know.
cat motif
That's,
is
yeah,
a
that's
connection,
interesting
possibly.
too. Yeah. So, but so it drifted into the dining room, and I actually got up and out of the my little pallet or whatever, just onto my hands and knees, and I looked around the corner into the dining room, and I saw it pass through the dining room chairs and table as it was floating, and then back out through the wall of the house.
Mhm.
And it was one of those, it had like a window in the wall, and it was, but that part of the house was, it was raised so that it wasn't just you know, you couldn't have just had like a sliding glass door there. It was some feet off of the ground.
Yeah.
And so, and I saw it go out the window, and then I lost sight of it as it kind of entered the yard, but it would have been floating in the air, you know, a few feet at least. And I just got back into, you know, laying down again, and I just, that's all I remember about that night, is that it just went away, and it was strange, you know. Didn't know what to make of that.
Did you tell your aunt and uncle?
No, we never really did, and I think it's, I still don't really know exactly why. Um, I think we were afraid that, again, that we were gonna, it wasn't gonna, you know, they weren't going to believe us.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, yeah, we never really did. Not until years later, actually, when when I put out to that, the first of those the Darkness Rises books. You know, kind of, my cousin told his parents, you know, and that's when they kind of found out that we'd had experiences there, and then they didn't really say much. I mean, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
think they had much experiences there.
It is
So
it is interesting that you didn't tell them at the time because most kids would be running up the stairs to their room, to
yeah, I
wake
don't
them and
know.
tell them all about it. Did it occur
Yeah,
to you too, and you just ultimately decided against it, or
I don't remember, but that sounds like something I would have done. Is just to think, no, that they wouldn't believe that, because
it's
I barely believed that. Like
yeah.
I was, you know, I didn't know anything about this stuff, so I barely was, you know, believed it.
It's interesting also that they did not experience these things. Now, you haven't told me everything yet. You haven't told me all the story. But so far, they've experienced none of what you've experienced. And that's odd. That indicates to me that this wasn't just, something that happened to be in the house, that this was
Okay.
something that was targeting you two specifically.
Okay.
I may be
Interesting.
completely wrong about that. You'll have to tell me, but
Oh, and I don't obviously like it's so much of this I can't say, I don't know for sure.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it could just be also that because we were kids, we were able to sense it better or easier,
Yeah.
um, as well. So, but yeah, so that was the end of that night. Nothing else happened. A lot of these were kind of just like it was one night and then that was it for, you know, like I didn't whenever I came over I didn't my that's interesting. I just realized that now. Whenever I came back over, it wasn't like my cousin had all kinds of stories to share about things that happened to him in the house.
Hmm.
That's interesting. Makes you wonder now if what you were saying was it wasn't just targeting us. I wonder if now if it was targeting me. Because I don't remember him saying he had any experiences in the house when I wasn't there.
Okay. Now we'll get to those eventually if you want to, if you have his permission. But what happened next? What was your third big experience?
Well, that's the thing. He's never said that he had any experiences. So
Okay.
like the ones he had were just the ones with me.
Okay.
Yeah. So um, but yeah. Now I only saw that white cat claw thing one more time, but that time I was frightened
Okay.
because something else I saw with it. So um, this the last time I saw it, I was only one awake. My cousin had gone to sleep by this time. Um, I
About
was still lying. I'm sorry.
how much time had passed between your first sighting and this?
I mean, it's probably like maybe a few weeks in between each one at the most. Could
Okay.
have been one weekend after another. It's yeah. It's I'm not good with the dates, like I said. This was all. I mean, definitely within the same overall period of time.
Mhm.
Same year, maybe even same like month or two. Um, so yeah, so we ended up this time we were sleeping in his bedroom. He had a one of those bunk bed things, but where the bottom part was like it wasn't a bed, it was like a little desk, and that's where he had his stuff. And
Yeah.
so I was sleeping on the floor, on blankets and stuff. But I wasn't sleeping yet. I've always been a night owl, and so I was just laying there trying to get to sleep. So this time I was the only one to see this. Um, I saw a that same light, um, and it started to like it came through or phased through the closed bedroom door,
Hmm.
and this thing kind of came through that door, and I at first I was just curious because I saw it again, but then as it hovered there, I started to see other um, lights that were in the air between me and this thing.
Okay. Like stars in
And
the sky in the darkness of your room.
well, they were more like closer to like skin tone colored, like skin flesh colored.
Oh, gross.
Yeah. Well, but it was so basically they started to change right in front of me in between me and this thing. Now, it wasn't like a horror movie where it was all like gore and stuff like that. It wasn't like that. It was almost like mannequin arms and legs
Hmm.
that were just like hovering in front of me, in between me and this thing. But it was almost like I knew they weren't solid. Like they were there, but not. I couldn't. I don't think I could have reached out and touched one of them.
Like they were like holograms.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And they,
Um,
so I can, because I'm having trouble visualizing this. They were just disembodied limbs
arms.
floating
Yeah.
around. Okay.
Yep. And there, I don't remember how many there were, but there were a few there. And like I said, they were. It wasn't like a horror movie where there was no. It didn't like they were real limbs. It was like they were mannequin, kind of
Mhm.
things. And but it was still I was still afraid at that point. But also I was stuck. I mean, this thing was right in front of the door, and you know and it was so I couldn't really get around it. It was not a big bedroom, um, and so I just closed my eyes and tried to block it out, um, and I just kept them closed, and somehow again I fell asleep.
Once again, it's very interesting that you did not try to wake him up. You were far more stoic than most your age at the time.
Yeah, I
Um,
think um, in some cases when you're born with a disability that kind of I don't know you have to deal with that can happen.
yeah.
I think
Now,
um,
about the relation between these objects, how did they seem to relate to the cat claw? Did they seem to be opposed to it, quarreling with it? Did they seem to be on its side, so to speak? Is a very crude way of putting it. Did they seem like they were there to support it, like they had accompanied it, or were they there to protect you from it? What do you think was going on there?
I didn't really get any sense of anything from them, of
Hmm.
any kind of intelligence or any kind of. I didn't get anything like that from them. I felt like this thing was um, showing them to me,
Okay.
like it was a show kind of, or um, but that's interesting now to think about it because if I would think trying to if it was trying to frighten me, then I would think it would have been more realistic, more, you know, more like a horror movie. But I mean, obviously, I
Not
don't know.
necessarily, because fear is subjective.
Okay.
A surreal scene like, say, an assortment of disembodied mannequin limbs floating around in a living room, that in itself is disturbing to many
That's
people.
true.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
do you think it may have been a symbolic display? They may have represented things in your life or in the world. Do you think it could have been a coded message it was trying to communicate to you?
I don't know. If it was, I didn't really get anything from it and still really haven't. I don't have any other, I
Hmm.
mean, I don't have any other disabilities. It's just
Yeah.
my eyes.
See it.
Um,
Well, go on, go on.
so yeah, but no, I don't really know. I can't think of anything for sure.
See, the thing is, it could be an intelligence that's programmed differently than ours, that thinks and processes information differently than we do. What it
Right.
was trying, what the message it was trying to present may have been very clear to it, but
Yeah.
not to us, and it may not have understood that. It may not have had a theory of mind,
Yeah.
call it.
Maybe it was its way of saying that, oh, you have a disability. Maybe it was like acknowledging that in that way, I
Yeah.
guess. I don't
Well,
know.
if that were its intent, it could have come up with more direct symbolism,
That's
like
true.
eyes and not
Yeah.
arms and legs. Um. So moving on, what happened next?
Well, so that was it for that weekend. I'd say maybe a couple weekends later, the last big thing that happened was happened in the middle of the day, actually. Um, so my cousin and I were sitting in that front living room again, but in the middle of the day, and we were sorting out. I don't remember how we were sorting them out or why or what, but my dad had some sports collectible cards, like baseball cards, basketball cards, and we were trying to arrange them somehow. I don't remember now how we were trying to do that, just busy work or whatever. So we were sitting there talking, looking at these cards, and neither of us were really big into sports, so it wasn't like we were really engaged with everything. But we were there inside the house at the time. We were alone, and I we heard this bump on the underside of the floor, or so like the basement ceiling, in this room below us. But it was beneath the couch on the far wall. But it was on the ceiling. Um, and it was just this one bump. It was kind of soft, but it's still audible. But at first we thought, well, I mean, who knows? Could be the house settling. Could be, we didn't think of anything weird at first. Um, we just thought it was the house, some function of the house. Um, and so we just kept on talking. And not long, a few minutes after that, another bump came from under the floor, and it was a little bit further out from under the couch and closer to where we were sitting.
So whatever it was moving towards you.
Yes. And again, we tried to just ignore it, and we didn't know what to think at that point. But I mean, we were just trying to ignore it. So we just kept on talking, and then a third bump came, and it was a little bit closer. It was more almost towards the center of the room, and each bump was a little bit louder. And that's when we started to get freaked out, and we were just sitting there, and we were trying to, talk it out what it could be, and then of course there was this loud bump, like a bang almost, on the underside of the floor in the very center of the room where we were sitting. And that was it. We decided, okay, we're done here for now. And we literally left, well, not left, but went outside and sat out on the front porch until my uncle, his dad, got home a little while later. And once we went back inside, everything felt okay again. But there was something I didn't, I didn't know how to think of it then, but there was something that was there that was building up with each of these knocks.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't something that could just be explained by geological pressure or...
Not that we could think of, and not to wait every time. I mean, it would like pick its, it would be timed, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, we couldn't think of anything, and we just felt like something was there, and it was trying to, either communicate with us or mess with us. I don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, it was too much. So, you know, um, we that was when we left the house. That time we did because, we could. It was the middle of the day.
Yeah.
So, but that also made it a little more frightening because it was in the middle of the day.
Now, I want to go back briefly and revisit the old woman and the cat.
Yeah.
It's always interesting when you have phantom animals and phantom objects and their sheen, their coat, their exterior, as the case may be, is always flawless, just gleaming, even when it shouldn't be. For instance, an experience my father and I had actually probably around the same time. Clear my throat here. Where we were in the woods near sundown, and we saw a woman on a horse just kind of appeared out of nowhere.
Mm.
And the horse's coat was just resplendent, almost unnaturally clean and gleaming, even though it was in the middle of the woods.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Or Men in Black encounters where the vehicles look like they're just straight from the factory, or straight from the dealership. It would be interesting to know what that cat's coat looked like.
I don't. I mean, I just know it was all black. and I guess I can say it wasn't like it was overly, like the fur wasn't like spiky or like
Mm-hmm.
it was overall it was smooth. It was not like fluffy or anything like that. You know what I mean? So
And the woman stared at you with some resentment, as if you were intruders. Yes.
yeah, it wasn't like an evil glare. It was more like, who are you and what are you doing here? Which,
Yes.
I mean, that can kind of make sense in a way, because the family had just moved in there recently.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I guess if
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Once again, my father and I have both experienced that. Yeah, but actually in the woods,
okay,
in on public property. That
huh? Oh
Yeah.
wow.
So that's a motif. I don't know, don't really know what's going on there, but it's a motif. So what happened next?
Well, from then on, we never really saw anything again
Hmm.
at the house. What would happen is when I'd be over there, at the time we were big into like video games, computer games and stuff. So from then on, we spent a lot of time in my cousin's room, and sometimes we would be there ourselves in the middle of the day again, and we would be upstairs, and we would hear doors opening and closing on the ground floor, and but we wouldn't hear any footsteps or any walking after that. It would just be doors opening and closing. And so the first couple of times we went down there, to see, but all the doors were right where they had been, and no one
Yes.
was home. Um, but of course, by this point, that didn't really scare us as much because, we didn't see anything. Then we didn't get any feeling of intelligence from that. The ground floor never felt weird when we came down there to check on things, and now it makes you wonder if it was what they would call a residual, or just a replay of things
It's
happening.
if it was just doors opening and closing, that to me sounds like mild poltergeist phenomena.
And it's weird though because, like I said, we never found any doors out of place. So I don't know if they were actually physically opening and closing or not because we never saw it happen.
Well, you still were fairly young then. It may have been other sounds that may have just been mundane sounds that you were mistaking for the opening and closing of doors.
Okay.
I mean, not to cast doubt on your experiences, but
Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah.
um, first off, as a fellow '90s kid, I have to ask: was it SNES or Genesis?
Um, it was mostly SNES. I think we didn't get a Genesis until a little while later. We did have Game Gear though at the time, and
Yeah.
that was fun. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, SNES, it was definitely like the Mario games, and Teenage Mutant Ninja
Turtles in Time,
Turtles
bro.
in Time. Yes, yep,
Yes.
that's the one. We actually got to the point where we could beat that game on the hardest difficulty level together.
Hmm.
Um, and that was, yeah,
So, back on track here.
yeah,
When beyond the sounds, did any that was those were the last experiences you had in that home, or?
yeah, that was it.
All right. So, in summary, in review, you had the head of an old woman. You had a cat. You had a cat's claw piloting a light formation, and you had a coterie of disembodied mannequin limbs.
Yeah.
Now, in do you think that those were all? What do you think those were? Do you think they were all the same entity manifesting in different forms, or do you think they were different entities altogether? If so, do you think they all had the same source? They were all kind of on the same team, or do you think the house itself was just kind of a magnet for that sort of thing, and it kind of attracted different entities independent of each other?
I lean more towards it was separate, but I don't know for sure. Um, I almost lean that way just because like every situation didn't feel the same. The first one was very much, oh, why are you here?
Yeah.
The lady. The next one with the white light and the claw in the middle, it was just passing through. But then when I saw that thing, it felt like it knew I was there. I felt like it knew I was there.
Yeah,
Um,
I was going to say they don't behave or they didn't behave of a kind.
yeah,
The one seemed to dislike you, the other one wanted to show you something.
right.
But what is interesting is that the claw light, that's just what I'm going to call it,
Yeah.
ignored you the first time when your cousin was awake, but
Oh,
focused
yeah.
directly on you when he was
That's
asleep.
that's true. And yeah, I didn't think about that. So that's why I like doing these interviews because
Yeah.
yeah,
So it could be that its display, if you want to call it that, was meant for your eyes and your eyes only.
yeah, that's possible. It definitely is. Now there is one other thing that connects back to that house.
Okay.
Um, it's not exactly. It's not like your typical ghost kind of experience. Over the years, I have had several times where I have had out of body experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and a couple of these have been trips to that house. But it was after my family moved out of there,
Yeah.
and every time I went there, the furniture was different, like all throughout the parts of the house that I was in. And one time there wasn't even any furniture in the house, at least in the room I was in.
Well, had it changed hands?
I know it changed hands
Right.
after my family sold it, but I don't know beyond that. We didn't know the people that I didn't know the people that bought it.
Okay. Because if so, you could just have been visiting it at different times under different owners. The time when there was nothing could have
Right,
been between moves, or that could have been while it was, under the auspices of the real estate agency.
right.
Or you could have been visiting it, not it directly, but more it in an astral sense, where you could expect it to look different, to have different contents. I don't know.
Yeah. There's only one dream of the house that I had that felt like an out of body, but it didn't make sense because of the layout of the front room, that front living room. Um, and this one, I did get a dark feeling from this one,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know why exactly. And this happened many years later. This was, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I had this dream that I was standing in front of the stairs to go upstairs to go to the second floor, and I turned and I looked at that entrance to the front living room, but there was no living room there. Um, Instead, it was a hallway that curved to the side out of sight and also curved down towards the basement.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like someone or something wanted me to go through that hallway,
All right.
but I didn't want to because I did not like the feeling I was getting from
Okay.
the whole experience. And
Now,
so I just stayed right there where I was in front of those stairs until eventually it passed and
just
I went to
just
regular sleep.
for clarification purposes, because my attention span fades in and out, is this passageway you were being beckoned down, that exists in real life in the house. That's
No,
not just something okay, okay.
no, it doesn't exist at all. At least it never did. And it wouldn't make sense for there to just to be a
Yeah.
because like for there to be walls to make a hallway, that would have there wouldn't have been any room for anything else in that room.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I don't know about that one.
Do you think that this intelligence could have been the same claw light that showed you the mannequin limbs? Could it have there be more that you had to learn, more that it had to show you that it was calling you back for that reason?
I don't know because I never really got an evil feeling from that claw
Yeah,
light.
there is
This
that.
this feeling that I got was bad from this hallway. Um, and I was like, it was like I was fighting. Like I part of me wanted to go down that hallway, but just this negative feeling I had, you know, that I just knew that I should not do that somehow.
All right. So after your last experience, how much longer did you live in that house?
Oh, I never lived there, but my cousin's family lived there. I think for another 5 or 6 years, 7 years.
Okay. Okay, once again, I want to apologize to you and to the listener. When I'm tired, my attention naturally
Oh, no problem.
fades in and out, and I don't catch everything. I was assuming you were living there with him,
Oh
with
no,
them.
no, no. I
Yeah.
was
O-
visiting. I visited.
Okay.
I went to the house enough where you might have thought I lived there. I was there almost every weekend for a while,
All right.
but no, I didn't live there.
So, um, after your last experience in that house, what was your first experience not in the house? What was your first experience elsewhere?
That would have been our grandparents' house,
Okay.
um, and that was again that was my cousin and I, the same cousin, um, and it was in the middle of the day, and this was it was definitely after the first experiences at his house. Like, so we already had a few experiences at this point. Um,
Okay.
but we were walking through this little hallway that connected the kitchen to, the basically the rest of the house. Um, and we happened to pass the stairwell that went upstairs, and we both stopped because we saw a funny. It was kind of funny. It was another older woman, but it wasn't the same one. Um, for one, we could see, she had clothes on, which is again, like, as you said, that was a good thing. Um, and it was like a blue dress with like a white apron,
Mm-hmm.
and she was just standing on the landing at the top of the stairs before you turn and go up the last few of the stairs
Okay.
to the second floor. And this one, I couldn't see her features as well, which is interesting. It was more like it was just it was just appearing. It wasn't. I don't know if you call projecting, or you know, it wasn't as intense as the other one was.
And what, if any, impression did you get from it? What kind of emotion, if any, did it convey?
It was neutral. I mean, I don't remember her facial features to say if she was smiling or not. I feel like she was, but I don't remember now for sure. Um, but yeah,
But it did not seem
it was
particularly interested in you.
no, and after having those other experiences, we were just happy that it wasn't, doing anything or glaring at us or anything like that. So, um, and what was interesting about it was she was standing. It was almost like she was standing in the curtains to this window that was behind her, but like she was in the same space as the curtains.
Okay.
Um, and she was like translucent at that point.
Kind of like in the same geographic space, just kind of at a different frequency, at a
Yeah,
slower
yeah.
frequency. Okay.
Um, and we just kind of we didn't know what to make of it. We knew it wasn't anyone that we knew, and there was no one else that in the house at that time. I don't remember now, but it's probably a family gathering, and everybody else was outside, that kind of thing. Um, so we just walked by, and it never moved as we walked by. Um, and so we saw this, and we saw it a few times in that same position
Hmm.
over time, or later visits to that house. excuse me.
Like a residual replay.
It was. And we found out years later from other family members that we were not the only ones to see this figure.
Yeah.
But when others saw it, it wasn't like translucent. It looked like a regular person, and it wasn't at the top of the stairs.
Well, okay, so it wasn't entirely a replay.
Exactly.
As for the
Yeah.
change in like surface texture and consistency, I've noticed just from my own readings that these entities their appearance tends to vary. That tends to vary with them. I don't know what the mechanics behind it is, but it just is.
Yeah. So I can go over the times that my family saw it if you want.
Yes, please.
Okay. So I found out that years before our sightings, my grandma had seen the same woman standing in front of the stove in the kitchen, and she wasn't moving. Um, she was just standing in front of the stove, but she was facing the stove, so I mean, she could have been moving, kind of if possibly a little bit, but my grandma didn't see that, and she saw it and looked away because she was like around. I guess she was like rounding a corner. I don't remember the details exactly now, but when she looked back in that direction again, it was gone.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was the end of that. Now, the only other person to see it was my dad. Um, but he actually saw it in the same place as my cousin and I did years earlier, again. But she looked solid, and she was actually moving this time. She was sweeping the landing. She had like a broom, and she was sweeping the landing on the stairs.
That's interesting.
And I guess she just vanished because that was all that my dad said. This he saw her, at the top of the stairs.
Again, it's interesting that you did not immediately run and report this to the nearest adult at the time.
Well, after the frightening experiences, this
Mhm.
one was just so not frightening that we just were like, okay, well, other stuff happened that over at the house, you know.
Yeah,
Apparently, it can happen in other places too. And
that's common for chronic experiencers. Whether or not your episodes are frightening,
right,
eventually you just grow desensitized to them, just whatever.
yeah, I think that's what happened.
But I assume because the two of you were having these shared experiences, these ongoing experiences. I assume the two of you were discussing them,
Um,
speculating.
not too much. I feel like my cousin didn't really want to too much,
Okay.
and I kind of didn't want to at the time either. I wasn't really as interested in looking into all the stuff at the time.
Mm-hmm. At,
Um,
at,
yeah, so
at the time, did it spark any interest in these topics? Did you start seeking out books, videos on them?
I think it
TV
was
shows?
more like stuff on TV. I would look. Um, that was also around the time of like I remember like unsolved mysteries,
Yes.
and sightings and stuff like that. Oh, I definitely started trying to. Whenever I managed to catch one of those shows, I would definitely
Yeah.
watch it.
Yeah, the early to mid 90s were a boom period for these topics. They really were.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, there's one more thing about this lady. We actually
okay.
figured out who she was. My grandma did actually.
Okay.
So once one day, my grandparents were close with the neighbors. They were friends with the neighbors, and so this one day, my grandma went to visit them, and she was talking with the wife of the husband and wife that lived in this house, and the wife they were talking in one of the rooms, and the wife had to go to another room for a minute, and my grandma was just looking around, and she saw a picture of this woman in that same kind of blue dress and white apron. And she recognized her right away as that woman that she had seen in front of the stove.
Mm-hmm.
And so the wife in the house came back as my grandma was looking at this picture and said, "Oh yeah, that's my mother-in-law, I believe it was, her husband's mom." And it turned out that her husband's mom had been the original owner of that house that my grandparents had moved into.
All right. Did you
And
find her name?
yeah, we know her, at least her last name anyway. I don't know her.
I won't pry into any of that,
Yeah,
but yeah,
but yeah,
it's
no, it was definitely a confirmed thing. But of course, now my grandma was not, I guess, either good enough friends or it wasn't, that kind of thing was not discussed. So my grandma didn't say anything to anything about it because she didn't want to freak anybody out, saying, "Hey, yeah, your mom is in my house," you know, still.
yeah. So what other, if any, other experiences did you have in your grandparents' home?
Well, the last couple that I had were out of body experiences.
Okay.
They happened, and I'm thinking it'd be about 5 or 6 years ago now. It
All right,
was
so this was years later. You were an
yeah.
adult.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
All right.
yeah, yeah. I didn't have anything else. We didn't have anything else really. Oh, I forgot. There was one more I had. One more sighting of this lady. I'm sorry. This is what happens when you don't write things down at the time, and then you just things add up, and you just forget. Um, so one more time when my cousin and I were kids around the same time, we stayed overnight at the house.
Mm-hmm.
We were sleeping on, at the time they had a big sectional couch in the living room. So we were on the couch. Of course, my cousin had fallen asleep already, and I was just laying there trying to get to sleep. And I saw this. It was a blue light from the hallway, and it came from the stairwell that went upstairs. And I looked up and I saw it was this lady, but this time it was like she was made of light. It wasn't like a flesh and blood kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oops, I have Discord open. I just realized that. Um, but and she came down the stairs through the hallway right next to me, again where I could have reached out and put my hand where she was, but I didn't. Um, and she walked around to the left and into the dining room and floated towards the window, which looked outside at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And but she stopped right where my one of the chairs was for the dining room table there, and she was standing. I'm pretty sure she had been standing in the same space as one of the chairs,
All right.
and she just stood there looking outside. And I got the sense that she was waiting for something. And I just, again, I just stayed there, and she didn't move for a long time. I didn't feel like she ever saw me or sensed me. I didn't feel any kind of attention from her. And eventually I fell asleep again. So that was the last time I saw her.
It is interesting that of the two human or human-like figures you've seen, both have been elderly women.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I don't really have any insight into that. It's just an observation. So, um, about how old were you when this occurred, and how much time had passed between this and your initial experience?
This was all within the same year again. It was
Okay.
all, yeah. So like when I was around 13 or 14 years old.
Okay. So,
Um, yeah.
moving into moving into the out of body experiences. Well, actually, those took place later.
Yes.
Let's move forward from this. Moving into your adolescence. Did you experience anything as a teenager in your mid to late teens?
Not so much. I'm trying to think now. My It was my dad and my at the time it was my stepmom's house. They
Okay.
had some activity in there. I can go over that. The thing is, I we could probably be here all night talking about these things because I have that house. I have this training center for the blind that I went to. I
Hmm.
have my own apartment. um, I've had experiences in all these places. Um,
Okay. Well, let's start with your stepmother's house.
yeah, so I don't remember. This was maybe a few years after, a couple of years, few years after all the experiences in my cousin's house and grandparents' house.
Hmm.
When things I started noticing things in the house where my dad and stepmom lived and my half sister there. I would go over there for weekends. My parents divorced when I was a little kid, like 3 or 4, I think, or 5.
Yeah.
Um, it was early enough where I don't remember them being together, basically. But anyway, so I would go there on the weekends sometimes, and then sometimes I'd stay for multiple days for holidays and stuff. Um, so one of these times I was there, I was sleeping in the guest room, on the ground floor. Now the guest room was kind of just uh it was a lot longer than it was wide. Um, and so I was laying in bed and I was trying to get to sleep, and I started hearing this whispering, coming from the space above me, and but it wasn't quite coming from the second floor. It was like it was coming from the um, the space just beneath the ceiling almost.
All right.
This, you know what? That was a second. I'm sorry. I'm getting these out of order.
Yeah,
But I'll,
don't
I'll just
don't be concerned with order, man.
okay.
Just
Yeah.
just continue.
Okay. Yeah. Um, so and but I couldn't understand what the voices were saying, and it sounded like little kids almost, but like, again, I couldn't understand what they were saying, and they were whispering, and I didn't get any sense of emotion from them. Like I couldn't tell what they were feeling or you know anything like that. And I didn't feel like I didn't get any sense of them sensing me directly. I didn't feel like that. It was almost like just the sound. And eventually they stopped. And this happened a couple of times in the same night, on and off, until eventually I fell asleep. And I just, again, this was after everything, my cousin's house and grandparents' house. So, like you said, you just get desensitized to things. And
Hmm.
it's like, well, okay, I can handle just whispering. I mean, it was definitely, I was interested in it at that point, but like, I wasn't interested enough at that point to try to communicate with it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, so I just kind of let it happen. Now, the thing I forgot is that that was not the first time I heard that whispering.
Okay. So now we're going back to the first experience.
Yeah, yeah, at least in that house. The first time I had that happen, um, was I was in the house alone, um, and I heard that whispering coming from. I was in the dining room, living room area, and there's the stairs that go up to the second floor in that same area, and I heard that whispering coming from the stairwell, like the middle of the stairwell.
Yeah.
And I went over there and looked, and there was no one there. There was no way for anyone to get anywhere from there without making noise. There were wooden steps, and it was an older house. They would have made noise. Um, and then the whispering stopped, and I went back, and it happened again. And that time I just let it go until it stopped again. And then my family got back, and I told them about it. And at this time, because this was a little bit later, and and they didn't know what to make of it. They didn't really have experiences themselves at the house. So but they at this point they kind of, I think I had started to tell people about my experiences at that point
Mm-hmm.
that I'd had, in my cousin's house and grandma's house and stuff, grandparents' house and stuff.
Now, at this point, it would seem statistically impossible for three major homes from your upbringing to all have phenomena in them like that. That's not just a coincidence, that couldn't be. What that tells me is that this phenomena is probably attached to you and to your family as a whole, and it follows you from between locations.
I would say that's definitely a thing that is possible, and I think it is the case. I will say though that eventually my family did have experiences there,
Okay.
so it wasn't just me. I just didn't know right away that it wasn't just me. Um, so, but I heard that whispering one other time in one other room. It was actually the like a parlor room that was in between the living room, dining room, and that guest room that I used to stay in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Everybody else was, I don't I don't remember now. I think they were either in upstairs or they were not anywhere near me, in the house. And I heard that whispering again as I was getting my I was working, like doing something with my backpack that I had brought, with clothes and everything, for while I stayed there. And I heard it again, and again it was above me, but it wasn't the second floor. It was like it was in the same space as the ceiling or the floor, or the upstairs floor. And at that point, I just stopped. I listened, and I always listen to see if I can make out words. And I never could make out any words, but it was just like whispering. And now I think about it, it was whispering and laughing, but not like an evil laughing, just laughing.
And they never seemed to be attempting to communicate with you. They just happened to be there while you were there.
Yes, but it was weird the timing because it was always when it was just me.
Okay. Okay. Or they could have been audible at times when more than you were there, just in other rooms, and you guys didn't hear them.
That's true. It
But
was
ruling
a
out
good
that
size house.
possibility, once again, if that's not the case, if they did only sound when you were alone, again, that's like the claw light experience
Yeah,
when this wasn't a matter of you just happening to be there. These were experiences tailored specifically for you.
yeah,
It could have been the same intelligence following you to a different location.
yeah. That's possible.
I'm not asking you to relate every single episode of these voices.
Well, that was basically it. So,
Okay, all right.
yeah, yeah, that was it.
So,
Um,
what
yeah.
what what else did you experience in that home?
Well, I remember this one time. I was there for the holidays for Christmas,
Hmm.
and everybody else in the house was kind of trying to get the house ready for people to come over and things. And my I was sitting in the living room. There was no one else in the living room, and my stepmom at the time was in the room between that living room and the guest bedroom. I think she was like wrapping, I don't know, wrapping presents or doing some kind of thing in there. And she had a CD player, boombox kind of thing, in there with her, and she had Christmas music on. And eventually she left the room, and I was reading a comic book at the time. That was when I could still read books in print. And so the music went on for a while longer, and then it just stopped.
Hmm.
And I didn't think anything of it. I thought that it just stopped. That just the CD was over or whatever. Well, she came back in there a little while later, and she asked who had turned off her music. Apparently, that was not. There was supposed to be music for a while still.
Hmm.
and none of us had done that, and I hadn't noticed anyone else go in the room after her. Not that they would have done that anyway. I mean, they're not going to go and turn off someone else's music.
Yeah.
Um, so none of us had done it, and we all admitted that we hadn't done that, and so she just, I think I remember she tried to put it back on, and that CD would not play that time anymore. At that time,
Okay.
like it was like something was messing with the CD player, and it just would not let it play. And so eventually she just got up and went somewhere else and was still working on stuff. But I thought that was really weird at the time, for that kind of thing to happen. So
Yeah, I've really no insight into that. So, okay, by the time you get to your late teens, like your college age years, what's going on by then?
well, my last couple of years, last year or so or two of high school, I was invited to go to this training center for the blind. Basically, where people could go with low vision or no vision could go to kind of learn how to live on their own,
Hmm.
different skills, how to live on their own. And so you would actually stay there for extended periods of time, weeks, maybe a month. Um, so I went there, and that's the next place where I had experiences, but it wasn't just me.
Okay.
Um, so excuse me, I have to take care of my nose here for a second. It's bothering me.
Yeah, it's allergy season here. Actually, I have to. Why don't we just like discuss the listeners and snort up a storm here?
Okay,
Sorry. There we go.
sorry about that. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I was
fine.
doing fine most of the time, but man, allergies they don't care what you're doing. So anyway, in this place now, I went there when I was like about 18 for a few weeks in the summer, and I'll go over that first. But I also went back there again about 5 or 6 years ago, and I
Okay.
had different experiences each time.
All right.
So the first time I went there, I was, like I said, I've always been a night owl. So in this place, there weren't it was you were on your own kind of thing where you could stay up all night if you really wanted to. You know what I mean? Um, and so I was up late one night, one of the first nights there. I was in the at the time they had a computer room that you could go into at night or whenever whenever you weren't in class or whatever. And but there was no one else in there with me, and it was dark outside. This is a big like a big big brick building, government building, um, and had really big windows, like the almost like old fashioned, just really big windows, and on the walls and stuff. And but I was sitting in this computer room, just online. Of course, I was loving the internet that they had there because it was the best, because it was a place where everybody had to use the internet,
Hmm.
and I didn't have that at home, so I was enjoying that. And I started hearing footsteps behind me, excuse me, and they were just walking back and forth in the middle of this small room, and I didn't get any sense of any feeling toward me. It was just like someone was just there walking back and forth. But where they were walking, there were actually a couple of office chairs in the middle of the room. So they would have been walking through those chairs. And I heard it. I turned and looked back, and obviously no one there. The door to the room was closed. So if anyone had been there, I would have heard them come in to the room. Um, and I thought it was interesting. I wasn't scared. I just thought, oh, okay, well, this place has something going on here too. I guess I don't know. Um, So, and I heard that in there. I heard that in the hallway sometimes at night when if I was there myself walking around, I would hear them like behind me a ways, just walking down the hallway. And I found out after that other people would hear that sometimes too, that same thing.
Okay. So just a presence in a general sense.
Yeah. Um, and so, and I kind of, just I thought that was interesting. I wasn't afraid, and no one else seemed to be afraid until it turns out that's just because we weren't in the area where there was major activity.
Mm-hmm.
So at one point while I was staying there, they moved me into this room that was set up to be like an apartment, like an actual apartment where I had like a living room and a living room bedroom area and then like a kitchen and that kind of thing. And it was not in the same wing as the rest of the living area, the dorm rooms. So when I was in there, I was the only one in that side of the building. Um, so the first night I went in there, I was sitting on the couch. It was a couch, but it was like an office couch. It had like a metal frame and everything, like an office room couch. And I happened to just tap the frame. Oh, there goes my heater. Anyway, I tapped the frame of the couch with my fingernails, and just a quick little pattern, just not thinking of much. And after I did that, I heard what sounded like a fingernail tap a mirror in the bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
which was out of sight. It was uh, um, I had to go into the kitchen and then turn right to go into the bathroom if I wanted to go in there. Now I was the only one in there,
Yeah.
but I heard the sound, so I decided, well, okay, just in case I have to test this. So I tapped out a different rhythm, a pattern
Mm-hmm.
on the metal frame of this couch. Same that tapping happened in that mirror again, the same way as I did that second time. And I did that one more time, and I copied it one more time. I said, okay, well, I'm gonna go and see what everybody else is doing for a while now. So I left that apartment for a little while that night after that happened because I knew there was someone else. I knew there was no one else in there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, not to interrupt you, but you know what's interesting is that recalls certain UFO experiences I've read about,
Hmm.
like in the writings of Harvey Rutledge, who investigated the UFO flap in Cuba, Missouri in the early 80s, where he described the objects in the sky responding
Oh yeah,
to to the researchers. They would take one step forward, it would move one step forward.
right.
They would move to the side, it would move to the side. They'd move back, it would move back.
Yeah, and I think I've heard other similar stories of that involving places that are said to be haunted too. Once in a while. Not super common, but I have heard of that. I listen to a lot of podcasts on the subjects, and a lot of so I've heard that before too. So both in UFOs and then, like I said, in the quote unquote ghost or haunted places area.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm interested in all of it. I think it's all can be possibly connected, or
Yeah.
one thing or another. I don't. The one thing I know is that I don't know what's going on. So I only use like I'll say ghost experiences to people when they ask what I've had happen. I'll use that just as a frame of reference, even
Mm-hmm.
though I really don't know what exactly I've experienced for sure. So, um, but so that was that I stayed out in the rest of the building for a few hours after that night. After that tapping, and I came back eventually because obviously I was getting tired,
Yeah.
and I had a bed in that room. Um, So I came back in, and I don't know if it's because of the activity or because that was our first time staying in a place without my family at all, or not, or if it was, I don't know why exactly, but I didn't want to turn the lights off all the way, like the
Yeah.
lights in the room. And luckily for me, they had like a dimmer, um, like a dial kind of
Mm-hmm.
set up. So I turned the lights down most of the way, but not all the way. And I laid down in the bed, and I um I started to drift off, and that's when I heard a woman's voice from the kitchen, and it was talking, but I couldn't understand what it was saying. And it woke me up completely because again, I didn't know I was supposed to be in there. And this happened a couple of times where I'd start to fall asleep, and then I'd hear this voice, and
Mm-hmm.
then I'd wake up, and then there'd be nothing. And I don't remember where it was, but I ended up like falling asleep on one of the other couches in that facility that night
Yeah.
because I was just like, that's not, I can't explain that at all. Excuse
Mm-hmm.
me. And even though I was also like, I was trying to figure out, could that have just been my mind? Maybe like because being in different states of consciousness or whatever as you're going to sleep. I forget what they're called, but I would have thought that, except for what happened a few days after that,
Yeah.
kind of confirmed that it wasn't just that.
Okay.
Because I was talking with a friend that had been at this trading center, but she had gone home,
Mm-hmm.
and we were on the phone, and it was like at 9 or 10 in the morning, and all of a sudden this voice cut through on the phone call, and it said something like, "I'm coming down the hallway now."
It cut through the phone call.
Yes, yes.
What did the voice sound like? Its
It
tone, its
was
intonation.
it was it sounded like a adult woman, not elderly, but just um and so like 20s or 30s or 40s, I
Yeah.
don't know. But and it sounded like she was just almost like she was just making a statement. I didn't think about it at the time, but what I think now is it sounded almost like what she would say to someone as if like she was on a walkie-talkie or a radio and like reporting what she was doing.
Yes. Detached.
Right.
Well, what
But
interests? Oh, go
the
on.
other
Go on.
thing, sorry, yeah, the only other thing about that's weird is that I mean there was a hallway right outside my door,
Yeah.
you know. Um. So, but then again, this was in the middle of the day, so there were people coming and going through the building, but none of them had that voice.
Well, it makes me wonder how is this thing able to tap the phone line in the first place?
I have no idea, and I knew what made it real to me was that I'm sorry, that my friend heard it too.
Yes.
And she actually asked, what was that? And we'd kind of been talking. She knew about some of my experiences. I said, well, that was the same voice that I heard in here that first night I'd stayed in here. And that freaked us out a little bit because that confirmed, okay, I wasn't just making it up in my mind that night. At least I don't think I was. If I was hearing that same voice,
Yeah.
you know, like
You know
that.
what would have been interesting is if you were to have contacted the phone company,
Mm,
the phone service provider, and reported that. I mean, you just explain to them in blunt terms what happened. As a customer, as a client, which this establishment was, they would, even if they didn't believe you at face value, they would have had to have looked into it. That would be interesting to see what the investigation uncovered.
yeah, if I had been a lot older, I would have been. I definitely would have pursued that more.
Any
You
kind
know.
of some kind of abnormality, some kind of strange alteration to the cables, or.
Yeah, I don't know. Um, and so the other thing that happened in that apartment, and this happened like every evening, every night,
Hmm.
um, was in that kitchen. I would hear bumps and bangs on the walls
Hmm.
and on the ceiling, just all random places, and it didn't sound like it was in the like behind the walls, like in the plumbing, or it was in that room. And I never saw anything when I looked in there, and it would stop when I went in there,
Yeah.
but then stop when or start again when I went back out again.
Again, it's like mild poltergeist phenomena.
Yeah. So the last thing that is interesting to me about that apartment is I eventually asked to be moved out of there once the other apartment in this facility was open.
Yeah.
And some of my friends, that were there, they said, "Oh well, you're not the first one to ask to be moved out of there. The person before you did the same thing." And I said, "Really? Well, why?" And they said, "Well, he never said to any one of us."
That's interesting because on the one hand, the phenomena you experienced growing up was very obviously attached to you and to your family.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yet this phenomena seems more attached to this location.
And so what happened after that was we decided I wanted to talk to this guy, excuse me. And I want to know what he had experienced. I mean, I wasn't going to just come out and ask him, like blunt because I really didn't know him very well. But one of my friends who knew him took me with them to his other room, and we started talking with him. And I mentioned, no, I'm at that time I was still in the apartment. I hadn't been able to move yet because I had to wait until this other one was open. I said, "Oh yeah, I'm in this apartment, and but I'm looking to get out soon, as soon as I can." And he wouldn't say anything, and I kind of just kept on going, like, "Yeah, I had some weird experiences in there, you know." And I don't remember his exact wording, but it was basically like, "Yeah, I did too." But he wouldn't say what they were. He said, "I don't want to talk about it."
Mhm.
And so something happened in there. I'm thinking. I don't know what to this day, but yeah,
But it is interesting that you had those experiences growing up. And then you
yeah.
would go, you know, and then you would go to this place and have more experiences uh by something that's not necessarily attached to you, that's just attached to the location. It's like, what are the odds?
Oh yeah.
Um, so was that the last of them at this place, or was there more?
That was the last that I can remember easily at the time. That was last of the experiences there at my first visit there, back when I was around 18 or 19 years old.
Okay.
Now, like I said, I went back there years later.
Okay.
Um, and I found out before I went back there the second time, the building was renovated and remodeled. And there were some rooms that were completely changed around and or removed. Guess which ones they removed?
Ah,
Guess which ones were not there at all once I got there again.
do I
It
really
had
have to?
literally, yeah, it was literally. Sorry to cut you off there. Um, it was literally there was no apartment there anymore. It had been just changed into two small classrooms, and I did not feel anything at all weird in there. After at that point when I came back the second time, so whatever was there, um, I think it moved on, and I think it moved on into the kitchen, which was actually right next door. There, the classroom kitchen, I
Okay.
should say, because on my second time there, um, I would go there sometimes at night when there were other people that were staying there when they were using it to do some cooking on their own. And that kitchen at night, that classroom at night, always felt weird. So I think whatever was in that apartment got basically kicked out or moved out
Okay.
and moved into this kitchen area.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before. Of an entity being attached to a particular like location within a location, and then that location changes, and then they're moved just slightly. That's a first for me. So I'd like to thank you for that.
Well, and it was interesting because like I could go by those two small classrooms at night, you know,
Mhm.
and I didn't get any feelings from that area. It was only when I went into this kitchen classroom, you know, that I felt things again. And so yeah, and I actually had a friend that was there that said that she saw this one night when she was in there alone, she saw a face appear outside the window and
Okay.
then disappear. Now it was a face of a young boy. That's all she could say for sure was that it was the face of a young boy,
Hmm.
and it appeared and then disappeared. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to make of that. I mean, who knows? You know, what I mean,
It just because it appears human doesn't necessarily mean that it is.
yeah, and I mean
It
that
doesn't
was a
mean that
lot of
it's not.
right, but that was a lot of if it, like I don't know. I feel like that was a lot of things for some something to do if it was just a young boy
Yeah.
and that and there especially to scare someone off like that badly where they wouldn't. I don't know, but um. So yeah, but I did find that out the second time I was there. Now also one of my first nights back in this place again. This was about like I said 6 or 7 years ago, and so I was about 32, 33.
Hmm.
Um, so when I came back again, the place had been updated and everything, and I found some of the people there. One of my first nights there, they were in this TV room. It was like a combination TV meeting room, and I walked in and they were watching like I think it was like one of the later seasons of Ghost Hunters or something like that. And so I decided to just stay in there with them and get to know the people that were there and stuff. And as we were sitting there listening in and then watching those of us that could the show, we would hear small bumps in the back of the room
Hmm.
and even see shadows in the back of the room when we turned to look back there that did not fit what was going on the TV.
Yeah.
And it was like there was one or more whoever back there that was hanging out at the same time we were.
Did the shadows have any distinct features?
No, and it was
Well,
just very rounded, very just
okay,
really
yeah,
vague.
that I should have phrased that better. What I meant was, did they have distinct individual shapes, distinct from each
Oh,
other?
I don't really know. It was I guess maybe I also didn't explain very well. It was almost like just shifting shadows, um like I don't know. It wasn't anything distinct. It was almost like movement shadow, like the
Yeah.
shadows would just move a little bit. Like we never saw like a figure of a person in them. I, I don't, and it probably didn't help that those of us that could see couldn't see much. Um, but but yeah, and as I started to notice that, someone else in the room at the time said, "Oh yeah, we've been hearing that and seeing that all night tonight."
Okay. So when
So yeah,
so at this location, you have a woman's voice, you have a boy's face, you have shadow figures, and you have let's just call it mild poltergeist phenomena. Once again, that's an eclectic bunch for a single location.
yeah.
I don't
We
have any I don't have any actual like logic-based speculation for these like I had for your domestic experiences.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, that was just like when I first got there. I mean, there was other stuff there after that too.
Okay.
um, I would. I, I'm even more of a night owl than I used to be, so I would be up at night a lot, either sitting in that same TV room or in the library, which is the room right next door to it. And I would hear a knock on the outside window or a tap.
Okay.
And I'd look out there, and it's like a courtyard, but this was in the middle of winter, and there were bushes out there, and I mean the snow was piled up to the sides of the building. So someone would have been standing waist deep almost or knee deep at least
Mm-hmm.
in the snow to be getting to the window to knock on it. Um,
Yeah.
and I would never
That's
catch any movement. I'd never see anyone moving away when I'd hear those bumps.
Yeah, that's a common experience is tapping on doors, tapping on windows, ploys to gain someone's attention to try to enter or to
Yeah,
get them to allow them in. But in this case, it seemed that was somewhat unnecessary. It seemed they already had a presence.
yeah. Now, when there wasn't tapping, like if I was sitting in the library, I would be sitting there and I would see movement out of the corner of my eye, and it would be outside in that courtyard again. And I would look, and there'd be nothing there.
Yeah.
And this happened a lot in the mornings, early mornings, and there would never be any sounds coming from the courtyard. And these were like they were like like industrial, glass doors, like full glass doors, with
Yeah.
the metal frame and so like I mean you could see out there pretty easily, and there was a lot of glass, so you could hear movement out there if there was enough people, moving around, and I never did. So and but yeah, that was like the stuff that happened when I first got there. The last night I was there, someone or something or whoever was there really wanted my attention
Yeah.
because there was a whole sequence of events. So, um, we were in that room again at night, and we had finished watching TV, paranormal TV of some kind or other, and everybody left the room, because it was getting late, and I was still in there for a while, and I was sitting there, and now the hallway lights in this building had been switched over to motion sensor lights,
Mm-hmm.
and so the hallway outside this room was dark. And but as I was sitting there, I started hearing footsteps, but also the tapping of a cane, a white cane. The cane that people that are have low vision or no vision, the one they
Yes.
use to detect their surroundings and locate obstacles and steps and stuff. I started hearing that walking down the hallway, but I looked up and the light never turned on in the hallway.
Hmm.
And the sound kept on going for a while, and then it walked past, and then it would stop, and then start over again, and then eventually it stopped, and the lights did turn on, and the night manager, security person, walked by and to do their rounds, and then they were out of once they were gone. You could hear their key ring, making all kinds of noise. And eventually they left, and the lights turned off, and that same sound started again.
You know, that almost that seems like it could be any number of things. On the one hand, it depends on how we interpret the source. Do you think it was the ghost of a former resident who perhaps died there, or do you think it was something non-human emulating the sound of a cane using blind person?
Yeah,
To
again,
try to
I can't say I don't know. I didn't get any sense of direct like, hey, look at or listen to me kind of thing. I I think that someone was trying to get my attention because of what happened after, but
yeah.
I didn't feel it directed like at me. I don't know, like I didn't get a sense of whatever was there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, what I was going to say was if it was the former, it could have been a residual thing, the way you describe it, moving over and over again in the same direction.
Yeah. I don't know. I was also at the same time I was hearing the knocks on the windows behind me too. So I was having multiple things going on at the same time there. And so not long after that, there was a bigger knock on one of the windows, and I turned and looked, and it was one of my friends, and he wanted to
Okay.
come in through the door in the library, which was locked from the outside, but I could open it from the inside. So he wanted to come in, basically, is what he wanted. And he came inside, and he told me a story of something that happened to him.
Okay.
So he said that he after he left, he went up to his room and laid down and tried to go to sleep, and he started hearing movement and bumps in his room,
Yeah.
which he had heard before, but he heard them this night, and he decided to take a tactic from the TV shows, and he tried to record these sounds, and he tried to do like a EVP session kind of thing. He on his phone he turned on the recording feature and he asked out loud, "Is anyone there?" And then he let it go for some time, and then he stopped the recording and he played it back, and he got a voice on the recording, and it was a woman,
Hmm.
and it said something like, "I'm looking for the one named James."
Ooh. Something was definitely trying to get your attention.
I mean, like, if I was hearing this, I'd be like, "Are you sure?" If I was hearing this story, and I was skeptical, wait, no, that can't be right.
Yeah,
But
I wouldn't agree. I wouldn't really believe that either, frankly, if I hadn't
it's
experienced it, which I
so
have.
over the top. I mean, it's just. But so he got this recording, and he was like, "Okay, I have to go now. I have to go see James," you know. And so he got up, but he had to. He was like so rattled. He he came downstairs. He met a friend in the hallway. He tried to play the recording for them, and it wouldn't play on this phone. He could
Hmm.
not get it to work. So he went outside and to have a cigarette, and then that's when from there he came to see me, and he played the recording for me, and it wasn't a one for one, but it was close to that voice I had heard about 15 years ago in that apartment.
Right. Two
And
observations.
yeah,
For one thing, the fact that it would only play for you
yeah,
is very interesting, as if even the phone message was tailor made for you.
yeah,
Secondly, the fact that the phrasing is interesting. The fact that she did not refer to you or did not say, "I'm looking for James," but actually, "I'm looking for the one they call James."
yeah,
As if she herself did not know your name, on her own account. As
right.
if someone or something else had told her your name was James, as if she was on a mission from someone else.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And as if the name, was not familiar to her.
Okay. Interesting.
As if it was kind of an alien or a foreign exotic name to her. The one they call James. As if, what kind of name is James? That's
And and it was interesting because there was like emotion behind the voice. It
yeah.
was not just like a monotone voice, from what I remember. But also with that recording, um, I mean, it really messed up my friend's phone for a while. Like his
Hmm.
phone would not work right for a while, and he tried to delete that message in it. At first, he couldn't get it to delete, and eventually he did. But you know, it was so it I think something really affected that phone. I think you know. So
Well, how
I
did
yeah,
you say there was an emotion in her voice? What emotion?
it was like she was. I don't know. It's hard to put into words. It's like she was serious. Like she was.
Urgent.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, yeah. Um, I wish there had been more. I wish I could have. I wish I knew enough to like. And what I really wish is that I could go there and stay there. Just with like one or two friends or family, and have the place to ourselves and really try to get feel the place out and see what happens.
Hmm.
But given that last I know it was a government facility, the
How?
likelihood of that.
Yeah. How specifically did it tamper with his phone?
It was, I don't remember exactly. It was like the I don't really know. I just know he couldn't delete the message, and that's all I remember for sure. Except for that, like I said, it was his phone didn't want to work right after that for a little while. I don't remember the details now, but
But I
yeah,
do see a pattern. I do see connections between not all, but most of your experiences. You told me that with the I'm just going to call them the arms and legs, that you felt the claw light was trying to show you something,
yeah,
trying to communicate something with you, and then years later you have something clearly trying to gain your attention.
yeah. That's true.
I'm looking for the one they call James, and then years before that, or maybe after that, I'm not sure of the chronology, you had an experience while out of body where something tried to entice you down a astral passage.
That's true. Yeah.
See, to me, it seems all your life you have been you have had these things following you, or maybe they're all just one thing, taking on different forms, trying to tell you things, to communicate with you. For whatever reason, I don't know what they see in you any more than they saw in me growing up.
Right.
And I have no idea what they're trying to tell you, if these are experiences designed to test you, or if they're trying to just mold you into something else for their own purposes, who knows?
Yeah.
Um, there's definitely something going on there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that was that location. Um, the only other place I could talk about is my apartment that I'm in right now.
Okay,
Um,
lay it on me.
all right. Well, this is another one of those things where someone was trying to communicate me with me, and they did, and it was mainly through dreams again. So I moved into this apartment about 15 years ago. I guess that means the first visit to that training center was more like 20 years ago. My gosh.
Mhm.
Um, but anyways, I moved in. Time flies. It really does. Um, and one of my first nights here, I went to bed in my at the time I slept in my bedroom. Now I kind of hang out in my living room more than anything else. Um, and I had all the lights off in the apartment, and but in this dream, I woke up still laying in bed, and but there was a light on out in the living room, and I heard movement, and I heard sound like furniture being moved around, and then I heard a man's voice, and he basically said, "Where are you? I can't find you. Where did you go?" And it sounded like he was really, again, he was urgent, looking for someone. But I was kind of afraid um, at first, and then the light started to fade, and I kind of realized, oh wait, this is not, I'm not awake right now. For that light didn't make sense for it to fade out the way it did. You know, um, so that was the first thing that happened there. Now the next thing was around the same time. All this was like within a week, 2 weeks time, just different nights and different days. So I had just come back home from doing errands one day, and I At the time, I was really careful about using the top lock on my front door as well as the bottom one. Um, so I got home and I had both locks on there, and I decided to put on a DVD and lay down in my a couch bed that I had out in the living room at the time, um, and relax, and eventually I fell asleep. Now something woke me up. I started to anyway. I felt pressure on the bed next to me, as if someone sat down on the bed, and
Hmm.
then I felt them lean back against the side of my leg. And this was before I ever got a cat, so I know it wasn't my cat. Um, and it was big. It was too big to be a cat, really. Um, and I started to wake up, but I mumbled something like, "Who's there?" And I heard a young girl, maybe preteen, maybe just early teens. I heard this girl's voice. She laughed and she asked me, "How can there be anyone here when you've double locked the door?" Which I had just done before I lay down.
It sounds like it was taunting you.
It didn't seem bad though. But it did seem like it was trying to let me know, hey, I know what you've been doing. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, like you had observed me. So of course at this I woke up. I woke up, opened my eyes, and sat up. And as I was sitting up, the pressure lifted from my leg and from the bed. But when I sat up and opened my eyes, there was no one there, and I heard no sounds. I didn't see anyone moving away. And this was a kind of a small apartment. I would have seen them, heading towards the front door, and I would have heard the door open and close because it was double locked. Excuse me. So, but again, I didn't feel anything bad from this whatever this was. So I listened and I didn't hear anything, and I just kind of said, okay, well, we'll see what happens from here on. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, I didn't know what to make of it. Um, so not too many nights after that, I had another dream, and I was sitting in my bedroom closet, the main closet, but I was everything was nothing was in there. None of my stuff was in there, so there was actually room for me to sit down. And I noticed that there was someone sitting on the floor next to me, and it was um, a young girl. It was just basically like how a young girl would look, and she had this like an old fashioned nightgown on, and she had like fairly long to medium length, um, like dark brown hair, and I could see that because she was not looking right at me, but she did turn to face me, and I could kind of see her face, and but what surprised me was that it was like she was basically had just died, like she was kind of decaying slightly.
Okay.
Now, but I again, I didn't feel anything bad from her, but it startled me awake. So, but that's when I was starting to wonder, okay, was that her? And wow, I'm having these weird dreams lately. Was that also something to do with her? That first dream about that man in the living room. You know, um, so not too long after that, a few days or so, I I had my one of my younger half sisters come over to visit. She was a kid. She was not even a teen yet. Um, but when she came over, she had to get a ride from her. She had to have her father bring her over to me because I'm legally blind. I can't drive, and but he works in the early morning, so she would get here about 5:30, in the morning or so. So a lot of times we would go back to sleep after she got here for a while. And so this one morning she came and I let her use my bedroom. I always let her use the bedroom. and I would just sleep on the couch bed out in the living room. And so I was laying down after she'd gone in there, and I had another dream, but this one was a lot more vivid and detailed. Um, I was in the living room still, but it was like the apartment building was like starting to crumble and fall apart, and I could hear the sound of a fire nearby. And I was looking around trying to find my sister. And at the same time, in this dream, I said, "Where are you? I can't find you. Where did you go?" Same thing that that other man said in that first dream.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, okay, I'm in this dream, but it's not just me. And I'm looking for my sister, but not my sister.
Yeah.
There was this weird sense of duality in this dream. And I looked around the apartment, but I never went in the bedroom for some reason. And I left the apartment and I went outside, and of course everything was on fire, and just, I heard screaming and shouting and laughing, and then I woke up. But as I woke up, I saw this girl in this nightgown walking by me, walking by the side of the couch bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to say something out loud, but I was also afraid of what would happen if this girl spoke or did anything else, and my sister in the bedroom heard or saw anything and came out and saw anything. I didn't want her to get frightened, be afraid. I didn't want anything to happen to her because she had no experience with any of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I had to. I realized I had to lay still, and I watched this figure walk past me until she was out of sight because I was just laying down flat, and then that was it. And I eventually heard my sister in the bedroom moving around, and everything was okay. But that was when I started putting everything together into a kind of a story from this girl. If that's, I'm thinking, I feel like that's what she was. Obviously, I have no way to prove it, but I feel like this was the spirit of someone, possibly a girl, young girl, that was caught in a fire in a closet of some kind. I don't think this one. I've never heard of this apartment complex having a fire like that. I've asked around a little bit, and I've never found heard anything about that. But I think she was caught in a fire, and I think what that first dream I had, it was literally of something that happened where someone was looking for her, but she was stuck in a closet of some kind or a space of some kind, and either wouldn't or couldn't come out, and then eventually died because of the fire.
And yet there is an eerie parallel there to your sister being there.
And that was interesting because they do have the same similar colored hair, but I mean, my sister was younger than this spirit
Yeah.
was. But yeah, it was interesting that it happened that morning like that too.
So, would you told me you would like to discuss your podcast?
Oh yeah, well, I I decided with all these experiences I've had, and I've had other things, bumps and bangs in my apartment over the years, just other different things in here, and just all my other experiences. I started getting into listening to podcasts over the years about this stuff too,
Mm-hmm.
and I really think it's important for people to have places to share their stories, and I decided that I wanted to help with that. Um, Partly because of how important it is, and just because I thought it would be interesting to find, to get stories from people about their experiences and share them, on a podcast. And so I just started it recently, and I have about 4 episodes, and it's all stories about things that are categorized loosely as ghosts, whatever they may be.
Okay.
And I read some stories from people, and comment on them, and share some of my own here and there. When they're connected to the stories I read, and I'm always looking for more stories from people. So
So, The format sounds similar to Beyond Creepy or Monsters Among Us.
Yeah, I would say I just started listening to Monsters Among Us. Yeah, it's similar to that. I haven't really gotten to where like I get phone calls. It's more just written
Okay.
stories, and I read them out loud. But yeah, it's definitely that's how it's set up is for that.
And which of the four episodes you've done so far is your favorite?
Well, boy, it's actually not one of those four that's released yet, but I just recently recorded um, two episodes that basically cover all of my experiences in this apartment,
Okay.
and those should be coming out within the next few months. I'm still trying to get like actual schedule down. Right now, I'm just trying to get one out per month. But I'm working on getting everything more streamlined, and so. But yeah, but the first one was just it was fun, just because I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so that was interesting. But yeah, I'm hoping to get a lot more stories. I'm always looking for stories. Um,
Yeah.
so if you go to my podcast website, you can find my email there. That
I
and
can provide you with mine.
oh, okay.
Not right now. Not right now on the
No,
air,
I
but
and that's okay.
I
Yeah,
can.
just email me whenever. It's actually my email is the same as the podcast. It's Salsido Paranormal at gmail.com.
Okay.
So
So what's the podcast called?
it's Salsido Paranormal,
Okay. And
and
where is it available for listeners?
it's on what do you Podbean, TuneIn, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts
Hmm.
slash iTunes, Amazon slash Audible. I believe that's it for now.
Okay.
Spotify.
All
That's what I
right.
was forgetting.
About how
Yeah,
long is each episode, or does it vary? I assume it varies.
it's varied so far. Well, I'm trying to figure out more, get more of a schedule going, and yeah, it varies, but from like 20 minutes to maybe at most 45 minutes so far, I believe.
So, with that in mind, what are some other things that have occurred in your apartment?
Yeah, well, I do have a what appears to be again a spirit of a cat that comes by here once in a while. Um, and this started before I even got my cat that is my living cat, you could say. It started before that, so I know it's not just me imagining, or mistaking things. Um, it started out with just um, feeling like something brushed past my ankles, like when a cat walks by you. I
Yeah.
never felt fur. I never felt fur, but I felt just like air movement, but a very specific way, like a cat would do. Because I've always been around cats and had cats, and you know, so I know what that feels like. And it would happen, like away from windows or walls, like exterior walls, to where I'm pretty sure it's not just a draft, you know. Um, so that's how it started out. Um, and then as far as actually seeing the cat, I saw it in the middle of the day one time, a few years ago. I was coming back home. I was outside. I was walking to the front door. Now, my cat, her name is Logan. She likes to stand in front of the window sometimes and look outside and watch me, when I'm getting home or whatever, if she's awake. And there, she'll do that. She'll stand by the window and then walk away when I open the door. And sometimes she'll even walk in front of the door as it's opening, which of course makes no sense, but that's what she does. Well, this one time I came home, and I saw a cat in the window, and it was sunny out, and I noticed, oh wow, that the sun is making Logan look like she's all white, like
Hmm.
she's just completely like she's a tuxedo cat, so she has some dark on her.
Hmm.
But I noticed this, and I didn't think much of it, but I saw this cat turn and walk behind the door as I was walking towards it to open it. And I opened it, but not much, so that I could just get in. And I looked around behind the door, and she was not there. And I closed the door quickly just in case she got curious and decided to try to get out or whatever. And no, she wasn't there at all. I quickly went into the apartment just to find her because I was like, I saw a cat there, you know. But she was sleeping on a rocking chair in my apartment on the other end of my apartment, all laid out in this rocking chair. She was not in front of that window.
Yeah. That's interesting because I've seen white cats myself. Even while I owned a white cat, rest in peace,
Oh boy.
I
Okay.
saw like phantom white cats, like out of the corner of my eye or one passing quickly by me.
Now, quick question: Were
Just
they
a few
are they
times.
big, big fluffy cats or more like sleek, like a smooth fur or whatever?
I don't know. I don't really categorize cat fur.
Okay.
Really short hair.
Okay. Yeah. No, this one was fluffy, but I didn't notice it at first in that window. Um, but what I think now is it was actually all white, and I was just thinking that the sun was making Logan look all white, but it
Mhm.
wasn't because she was not there by the door.
Well, what's interesting is it definitely seems that cats are a recurring motif.
Yeah, I've always
In
been drawn to
life.
cats.
You had the cat in the basement. You had the cat claw light.
Yeah,
You had the cat, this cat. Do you think they all could be, or at least more than one, could be a different manifestation of the same spirit, the same being?
I don't know. It's possible. Yeah, I don't know. Um, so and now the
It
time
could
after
still
that.
be a literal ghost of a cat that used to live in that apartment.
Well, and that's the thing too. I don't. It's possible. But if it is, then it knows how to come to people in their dreams.
Okay.
Because I saw this cat, the same cat, in a dream one time. Um, I had fallen asleep in my chair in front of my computer, and I was just sitting there, and I fell asleep, and I had a dream. I don't remember what it was about. It was just a regular dream to start with, and then it faded away, and then this big fluffy white cat appeared in front of me,
Okay.
and it was like sitting on my chest, but I didn't feel any weight. But it was right like in that area where it would be if it was physical, because it was like right in front of me. Um, and it was staring at me, not in a bad way, but just like it knew I was there. It was there, and I was there, and it was just basically just looking at me like it was, I don't know, like saying hello, or I don't know for sure. But it was really fluffy, and it had like big blue eyes, regular size eyes for a cat, but still just really clear. I could really see its eyes well. And but then I started to feel pressure on my chest, and I started to wake up, and it faded away. And turns out Logan, my real cat, was actually sitting on my chest, and she was looking at me too. And what's weird about this is she doesn't she hardly ever jumps like goes comes on top of me like that. She
Hmm.
only used to do that when she was a really tiny kitten, when she was weighed next to nothing. Once she started to get bigger, she stopped doing that. So for her to do that was really unusual. And then as soon as I woke up and saw that she was sitting there, she just jumped down. And I don't know what to make of that. So other than maybe that she was aware of that other cat, I don't know.
I don't really have anything to say to that either. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Usually, I have points of speculation. I have
Yeah.
observations that I could make, but for this one, I just don't. Maybe a
Well,
subconscious, maybe subconsciously you miss her doing that. You miss that behavior,
yeah, that's
and maybe
true.
this cat being is kind of a projection, like a tulpa created by your subconscious that it created to satisfy that.
Well, if that's the case, then it also likes to walk around in my bed, excuse me, at night when I'm
Okay.
awake. I'm still awake, but what's weird about that is, see, Logan will do that too sometimes. She'll get on the bed and walk around and then lay down. But with her, I always can feel when she gets on the bed or when she gets off of the bed. Now, with this other cat, I will just feel the bed shifting like this cat is walking around the bed. I never feel it get on or off. And whenever I look, there's nothing there. So I don't know about that. For sure what to make of that. So yeah.
So, what about these out of body experiences you just referred to earlier? Could you describe those?
Yeah, well, it's what's interesting about those, most of those, except for the ones where I visited my cousin's house and my grandparents' house. Um, I a lot of those have been visits to places that I had never been to
Mhm.
before, and I'd have a dream about a place, and then months or years or decades later, I'll go somewhere, and it'll be that place exactly.
So, you would have a dream about a place you'd never been to.
Right.
Years later, you would visit it on the astral, and still you'd never physically been there.
Well, no, it was the astral first,
Okay.
and then it was
Once
in
again,
person
tired,
later.
kind of winding down.
That's okay. And in the dream version, there was never anyone around.
Yeah.
But then when I go there in person, in the physical, I would be with other people, and there'd be other people moving around in these places.
Now, what do these OBEs feel like? Because I've never had one. What do they feel like physically? Like the accompanying sensations.
Yeah, sometimes they can be like one can be different from the other. Um, I know when I now just briefly go back to my grandparents' house, the couple of times that I went there out of body, it was after my grandfather had passed away and my grandma was living there on her own for a little while.
Hmm.
I think I can kind of chalk that down to just like me thinking about her and maybe
Hmm.
worrying a little bit, which is how I maybe was able to go there and visit. With those, I could feel like the floor beneath me, and I was even to the point where, like in these dreams, I would always appear, or in these visits to the house. Both times I appeared, I was always like sitting on the floor, so I could feel the entire floor, beneath me. And one time I was in one room, and my grandma was in the next room, sitting down, playing like solitaire on the table. And I wanted to go to her, but I was also afraid because I didn't know what I would look like or sound like. And for some reason, that I was, I really was really concerned about that, and I didn't want to to frighten her. You know what I mean? Like in case anything was different about me in that state. So, but
What
yeah,
what
sometimes I
all?
can
Mm.
feel things.
Go on.
Sorry. Sometimes I can feel things like the floor and everything. Other times it's more like I'm floating, but it's still there's this vividness that makes it seem like it's a lot more than just a dream.
Yeah. So, what all places have you OB'd to?
So one of the interesting ones that I went to was just this one little room, and it was like an office in a building, and I could see a desk and a chair, and then a wall behind it, and a window in the wall, and then I could see like a street light outside, and there was no one else in it, and it was nighttime, so I couldn't see any of the details of the walls, and that was all for that dream. Now, when I years later, I did this like I think what they call a co-op or something like that in school, where you
Yeah.
go and work in a place. I worked in this office building, and this one day, one of the workers there gave me something and said, "Take this to so and so over in that direction." They told me where to go. And in this building, they had like filing cabinets set up like almost like walls within this office. There were so many of them, and I followed the directions and I walked through the in between these two walls of cabinets, and there was the desk and the chair and the wall and the window.
Mm-hmm.
But there was someone sitting there this time in waking life, and I gave him the file, and I had to like try to like just get out of there without so that I wouldn't seem like I was staring because I knew it was that spot.
Hmm.
And there was nothing like that action of taking that paperwork or whatever to that person. It had nothing to do with me. It wasn't anything like the paperwork wasn't connected to me. There was no, I wasn't like looking to advance in that office to where I got hired thereafter. There was no obvious reasons why I should have
Yeah,
that experience.
I know what you're saying.
So that was one of them. Now the other one that really sticks is I had this dream of being in a kind of like a lounge, like a cafeteria, but not quite with all the like the kitchen. It was just like a lounge with chairs and tables and I even had like booths and stuff and TVs. But on the one of the walls, and it had a hallway going through the middle of it too. Like there was two door on either end of this room, and there was a hallway. But on this one wall, there were these like arrow shaped I don't know what you call them, forms or whatever on the wall, like a design on the wall, and it was like 5 or 6 different colored arrows in a row, all connected to make like a bigger, giant arrow kind of thing. And I focused on that because it was more detailed than anything else in the room. And I remember I could hear the TV on, but I don't remember what it said. I think it was just TV on, you know, just you'd find it like in a lounge. But so I had this room in this place now, and then I literally floated around this room, like just checking everything out, and then eventually everything faded, and I was that was the end of that. And years later, this was um, like more like when I was in school and everything. Now years later, on that my second visit to that training center that I went to, we went to visit another. It was like a trade school, just to go on a tour of the place.
Mm-hmm.
And we were walking through this on this tour of this place. Walked into this room. It was that same room. It had that same arrow shape on the wall. Same tables and chairs and booths and TV. This was in the part of the state that I live in. I live in Michigan. This
Yeah.
was in the part of the state that I was in that I had never been to before. I have no family out in that direction. This was, I don't even know where this was. I just know that at the training center I was at was in Kalamazoo, and there was like a 2 hour or more drive to get to this other school. So I don't even know what part of the state I was in at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait,
There's
wait.
no
You're,
way.
you're from Michigan.
Yeah.
Where in Michigan?
Oh, southeast Michigan, outside of Detroit,
Oh,
like
okay.
Macomb
So not
County.
the Upper Peninsula.
No, no.
Okay, then you're farther removed from me than I thought.
Okay, yeah, yep, yeah. So and with that arrow shape on the wall was what it was the same thing. So I have no idea how or why. I never went to that school. It's not like
Mm.
I was going there to sign up for it. Again, there are these things that I heard you on a podcast or a previous podcast saying that you would have kind of premonition like dreams of things, but they are like mundane things.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
when you
not
said
even
that, it
dreams,
reminded
just
me of this.
conscious experiences. Actually, I
Oh,
would
okay.
see things. It would always be mundane things. I think one was like a vending machine being refilled, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
haven't had those in years.
yeah. So these are almost like those in a way that they didn't. The places had no huge significance. to
Yeah.
me, you know. But yeah, I've had that happen with a few different places.
Those would seem to be more accidental than planned events, like your other
I think so.
experiences.
Yeah.
Or maybe they do. Maybe they do have a kind of an esoteric significance that we're just not grasping.
Right.
Once again, whatever this intelligence is, maybe it's just another sign of how it doesn't understand our perceptions or thought process. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I know. It's so many questions. So yeah. Um. So stuff like that. That's mainly been it for that. And yeah. So I have those. I don't have those. It seems like I had more of those in my teens than I do now. Like I don't have a lot of those now,
Okay.
which I think kind of is interesting in a way because you know I've heard that kids and teens can sometimes have more things happen.
Yeah.
You know, and I
Let,
don't
let,
know.
let me ask you this. In the homes you spent time in growing up, did it seem like the phenomena, that the presence, that the atmospheric disturbance that accompanies this stuff, did it seem like that was stronger in certain stories and in certain rooms than in others?
Um, let's see here. My cousin's house, not so much.
Hmm.
My grandparents' house, not really at all. Now my stepmom's house, yeah, that place. One other thing that happened there, and it was one of those things that it's almost like that to the extreme. I volunteered to watch the house for like a week while they went. My family went out of state somewhere on a trip. Um, I didn't have very many like I didn't have my cane at the time or very good training in how to get around. So like I didn't like to go places very much that I didn't know. You know what I mean? So I was not really interested in going on this trip with or any trip really with anyone like that. So I offered, and this is I was like in my late teens, I believe. So I wasn't really a kid, obviously. Um, One thing I noticed about that house is at the later it got in the day, like towards dusk, I would start to feel like the house started to just fill up with this presence or multiple presences. I don't know, but I didn't like it, and I had to have music or some kind of sound playing the whole night. Every night I was there alone because otherwise it was just too. It was just it was just too scary. Basically, just the atmosphere felt too thick.
Yeah.
Like I needed something to like as a shield almost. You know, I mean, I had the radio on, CDs on the whole time I was there. Once it started getting dark outside, so and that was mainly in the on the ground floor, which I didn't really go upstairs much. That was where the other bedrooms were at. So I don't know about the bedrooms upstairs as far as if there was that same feeling up there, but definitely the living room and that other, I think it was like a parlor or something like that, definitely started to feel strange at night.
Yeah.
If that was, or even when I was there and everybody else was at the house still, but they were upstairs. If
Yeah.
I would if I would come out of that guest room and to use the bathroom at night, I yeah, there was someone or something that liked to stay in that living room when everybody else was asleep, and like it was like I could feel that it knew I was there. Or, I could feel that I was being watched. Like
Yeah,
something if someone
I
knew.
know that well.
Yeah. So I had that in that place, and then of course that apartment in that training center definitely had that atmospheric kind of thing in there. So yeah.
We're kind of winding down for the evening here.
Yeah.
Kind of running low on time. James, you are a published author.
Yep, I've been writing since I was a kid, and it's really funny. I always thought, oh, I'll always just be a writer.
Okay.
I'll never get into, talking out loud and recording myself talking out loud. And it still seems
That's
weird to me when I
good to
listen to my
hear
own
that.
recordings. It's strange, but
Uh,
I
what
like it.
what I was going to ask is, would you like to return soon and discuss your books?
I could do that. I definitely at least the fictional ones, and then yeah, I could do that. I haven't looked at those books in a while, but that'd be fun.
All right, cool, cool. We're going to do that.
Okay.
Until then, I'd like to thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
It was. I appreciate your appearance, and I would like to thank whoever takes the time to listen to tonight's episode. As always, I'm your host, Michael Parrish. Take it easy, everyone.